Good morning. Well, without any preparation at all, here I go. Miriam's sixth book, which was originally sixth and seventh book. But it was so long that I thought I would break it up into two books, like some very famous author once did for her last two books. But then about 10 years later, I decided to combine it back into one book. So instead of Miriam's Silver Years Part 1 and Part 2, I decided just to make it Miriam's Silver Years. So there's a useless piece of information for you. So it's ended up about this thick. Hence the stupid little picture that you've just seen. Anywho, yes, it goes from about the years 1948 to 1963. Quite exciting years for those that have lived through it. And for anybody listening, I've been looking through since I've been doing this series, but I might as well ask if anybody's listening now, if you've noticed that there is very, very small amount of views that this series is accumulating, and it's puzzling me because I've got about 650, what do they call it? Can't think what they call it now. My brain's going. It's mush. It's pure mush. So subscriptions, that's right. And yet I get no views at all on these things, and I don't know anything about YouTube at all. But it seems to me that I don't understand why nobody's viewing these videos at all. Maybe so I'm speaking to you, YouTube, not to anybody. Not that YouTube's going to take a blind bit of notice, but why isn't YouTube sending out these YouTube to my subscribers? It's a mystery, a complete mystery to me. So if anybody knows the reason why, could they please tell me? Why aren't my 650 odd subscribers being told of these videos? Well, that's my little rant for today, and there you go. But I shall continue to do these anyway, because that's what I've been told I must do. Keep on doing it, one every other day, because apparently the algorithm likes consistency. Anyhow, Miriam's Silver Years. Here we go.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today our mission is to cut right to the core of, 15 incredibly pivotal years in post-war Britain, all seen through the eyes of Miriam, her husband Roy, and their ever-expanding and very complicated family.
We're jumping in right at 1948 and going all the way through to the social tide of 1963.
We're calling this period Miriam's Silver Years. And it's just this intense time of transition, isn't it?
Absolutely. The family is, they're trying to move out of austerity, out of that lingering war trauma, and into something new, a kind of fragile prosperity and massive social change.
So our goal here is to track how Miriam manages all of this. The economic struggles, the intense secrets, and eventually the next generation starting to move away.
Yeah, we're really watching her shift from being a mother into becoming this steadfast matriarch that we've come to know from the sources.
And we begin our deep dive in April 1948 with a scene that's just so deeply symbolic. It's in the back garden of number 8 White Road, and Roy is literally digging up the past.
He is. It starts with him digging this massive hole for Mary's poor pet rabbit.
Right.
And it's an immediate signal, isn't it, that life after the war is still filled with these small tragedies, but also this major symbolic labor.
And this incident with the rabbit, It gets scared to death by a neighbor's dog. It brings up this unexpected tension.
It really does. Mary's reaction is so terse. She just says, just goodbye. And I hate dogs. It's just this little snapshot of suppressed childhood trauma. A small wound, really.
Yeah.
But it sets a tone of the sort of underlying hostility that exists even in their own garden.
And then after that small burial, Roy's main task is much, much heavier. He has to dismantle the decrepit, rusting Anderson shelters.
These things that were so necessary for survival just a few years before, and now they're just ugly, dangerous junk in the garden.
It's the essential but completely thankless task of those early post-war years, isn't it?
It is. Removing the physical signs of the Blitz from your daily life. For Roy, putting his back into hauling away that corrugated iron, it's his way of saying, the war is over, here, now.
But the sources show it's not just a physical job. It's also a psychological purge.
Exactly. And speaking of purging, they're also trying to sort through all the stuff left behind by the previous generation, specifically Miriam's mother's belongings.
And we hear about 3 suitcases full of old things. Old seeds, meticulously organized bills, just paperwork.
That sheer volume of stuff kept over a lifetime, it speaks volumes about the economy of scarcity they grew up in. I mean, why would you keep old seeds or bills from 20 years ago?
Because everything had value.
Everything had value. And so this new generation, Miriam and Roy, they have to sift through this mountain of history, deciding what's worth keeping and what can finally be let go. They are literally clearing space for their own future by processing the clutter of the past.
Okay, so let's unpack what was the greatest immediate worry for Miriam at this point, which is her son, Peter, being whisked away for national service.
This 2-year commitment was a huge deal for young men back then.
And Miriam's anxiety it's really deep-seated. It's coming from 2 places at once.
It is. First, there's the obvious trauma of the war. She is absolutely terrified that Peter will get drawn into some new, smaller conflict, maybe in Palestine or Malaya. She survived the Blitz, only to have the state potentially take her son for another fight.
And the second fear is just as powerful for a mother who values hard work and education. She's afraid those 2 years will be completely wasted.
And that concern reflected a massive societal worry at the time. I mean, the generation that fought the war had already lost 4, 5, 6 years of their lives. Now, this new generation who are desperate to build careers and start families, they're forced to give up 2 years for military training.
The government line was all about forging character and discipline, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But when Peter comes home on leave, his stories just completely dismantle that whole idealized narrative.
He calls the sergeant majors demented monsters who just insulted the recruits for sport.
And he talks about the brutal cold in the barracks and the food in the NAAFI, which he just calls uneatable.
For anyone unfamiliar, the NAAFI was basically the canteen and shop for the armed forces.
Right. So the fact that Peter is describing this petty tyranny and just, physical misery, freezing, cold, awful food instead of some kind of noble training, it makes Miriam feel this terrible guilt.
She feels she's betrayed the boy.
Exactly. Her son, who was so capable during the war, is now being subjected to what she sees as pointless degradation. It's a total loss of control over her child's future.
And this need for control, especially over their economic destiny, leads us straight to Roy's ambition. He is absolutely determined to leave his job and open his own bakery again.
He gets news about a suitable shop on Crownfield Road, and that's what really sets the idea in stone for him.
This decision is just pure post-war aspiration, isn't it? Roy is betting on himself, on his skill, and on the slowly recovering market.
He is. But what's so fascinating is that even this fresh start is just steeped in tragedy. The previous owners, the shop was closed because the original baker died in the war.
And his wife passed away just 3 months later. The source says it was from a broken heart.
It's just chilling. So Roy is literally buying a business that was created by a double tragedy. It shows you the war's devastation wasn't just, bombs and buildings. It destroyed small businesses and families through grief, years after the fighting stopped.
It connects right back to what Miriam is always thinking, that the war's emotional cost means suffering to last 1,000 years.
Even their new hope is built on a piece of ground that was vacated by a catastrophe. It just keeps the past right there in the present.
But as 1949 starts, we see this first real flicker of public optimism. the end of clothes rationing.
And the atmosphere in Ilford just shifts instantly. People were reportedly throwing away their coupon books.
It's a huge symbolic moment, isn't it? Rationing had defined British life for 9 grueling years.
Absolutely. Clothing was so tightly controlled, you had to register to get coupons, and you never got enough for what you really needed. So when that control is finally lifted, there's this tangible sense of liberation.
The shops are full of signs saying coupon is no longer required. It suggests that finally something positive was happening. People had some control back.
But the source material just perfectly captures this clash between that symbolic freedom and the financial reality.
Right. Miriam, Emily, Dawn, and Mary, 4 women, go on this big, highly anticipated shopping trip. They have lunch at a Lion's Corner shop. They're soaking it all in.
And what do they actually buy collectively? A new hat, some stockings, socks, knickers, and one Agatha Christie novel.
That's it.
That is the essential, heartbreaking contradiction of the time. The coupons are gone, but the money just isn't there. The post-war economy was all about paying off war debts and rebuilding, not, giving working families a big consumer boom.
So they had the right to buy new coats and dresses.
But the grinding poverty that was still their reality meant they could only afford the basics. And maybe one tiny luxury, like that book. The excitement is real, but the climb out of hardship is still incredibly slow.
They're getting a taste of optimism, but their wallets are keeping them firmly grounded in austerity.
Exactly. And that fragile balance of ambition and anxiety is what really sets the stage for the personal crises that are about to dominate the next few years.
And those crises arrive very quickly. We're moving now into late 1949 to 1952, a time marked by overwhelming medical emergencies, shocking confessions, and the complex reality of new relationships.
We start with Miriam's closest friend, Rafa, and her husband, Ganesh. They've only recently married, and Rafa starts hinting to Miriam and Sarah that Ganesh is becoming distant.
She says he's not interested in her anymore, and she's worried he might be seeing somebody else.
And Miriam's first reaction is so interesting because it reveals this cultural naivety.
Yeah.
She dismisses the idea of cheating, believing that it's only white men that do that.
She sees Ganesh, who is Indian, as being somehow morally superior to the working-class white men she knows. But Rafa is deeply distressed, saying she feels like she's being treated like a whore.
That prejudice, it really speaks to Miriam's deeply ingrained, if a bit misplaced, morality. She's compartmentalizing human behavior based on her own limited experience. She's trying to protect Rafa, but she's projecting her own idealized notions onto Ganesh.
Then the real reason comes out in 1950, and it just shatters all of their assumptions. Ganesh collapses at work.
He's diagnosed with a life-threatening, aggressive brain tumor that needs immediate surgery. And that medical tragedy explains everything. His limp, his distance, his strange behavior. It was physical illness, not a moral failing.
And the swift shift from suspected infidelity to a medical catastrophe is overwhelming. But the trauma is compounded almost instantly.
Because Rafa is pregnant, and she gives birth to triplets, Abha, Morley, and Falak, just as Ganesh is recovering, in a coma after brain surgery.
Triplets. It's just a quadruple emotional hit. You have the immense joy of 3 healthy babies, but it's completely overlaid by the trauma of Ganesh being medically absent. He misses the birth, he can't even send a message.
It just highlights the extreme vulnerability of the family unit back then. But luckily, Miriam steps right into that void. The bond they forged at Holloway proves to be far more reliable than Ganesh's own family, who were often discriminatory towards Rafa.
So Miriam becomes the essential support system, managing newborns and a surgical crisis all at once.
And while she's doing all that, she is also trying to find a formal purpose for her own life. She expresses the strong interest in becoming a part-time prison visitor.
This is her trying to turn her own personal shame into some kind of institutional empathy, isn't it?
It is. She feels her life is a bit empty with her kids growing up. She wants to use her past, her time in prison, to provide kindness to women who are going through what she went through.
Her journey to the interview at Petty France is described as nerve-wracking, almost as scary as the day she was first sent to Holloway.
And the interview panel, crucially, they already knew about her past.
Right, and that's the powerful moment of transformation. They weren't focused on her criminal record. They were focused on her sincerity.
And the great full-circle irony is that if she's successful, her destination will be Holloway, the only women's prison in London. She's essentially returning to the scene of her punishment, but this time as a source of solace.
And this desire for institutionalized good is immediately contrasted by the raw chaos and law-breaking that just erupts in her own sister's home. Let's talk about Terry, Sarah's husband.
Oh, this story begins in a truly dark place. Sarah shows up with a massive bruise on her face, the size of an apple. She claims she fell in the outside toilet.
But Miriam knows her sister isn't clumsy. She immediately knows it's a lie. The source notes the bruise looks like a four-penny one, which is slang for a severe punch. It's a clear signal of domestic violence.
But that mystery is quickly overshadowed by Terry's legal trouble. He shows up drunk on Christmas night, causes a scene, and then gets arrested in March 1951.
For illegally brewing alcohol, not paying the government duty on it. And Roy notes this is a big offense to the taxman.
Right. And you see the law focusing on this relatively minor infraction, while the major underlying problem, the domestic abuse, remains hidden. It's only much later that Sarah confesses the truth.
Terry gets 4 months in prison, which is a surprisingly stiff sentence.
It shows how seriously the government took lost revenue. And Miriam's reaction is so layered. At first, she's just consumed by fury. The disgrace he had heaped on everybody.
But then her own memory kicks in.
She remembers her own time away at Holloway, the cold, the separation, the suffering it caused her family. And she realizes that even for a difficult, violent man like Terry, 4 months away is a heavy emotional cost. And that empathy, born from her own suffering, it softens her rage and lets her support Sarah.
Okay, shifting to some happier moments now, however complicated they might be, we're seeing the next generation begin to formalize their relationships. And we get 2 very different weddings that perfectly capture the social landscape of the time.
First up, Emily and Edison in May 1952. Their choice of a swift civil service at Stratford Town Hall, and specifically avoiding a large and public wedding, it just speaks volumes.
They knew a big spectacle would not be in their best interests. It was a defensive decision, wasn't it? Made because of the intense, pervasive racism Edison faced in England.
Absolutely. He'd served in the U.S. military, but coming to England didn't mean he was free from prejudice. They faced casual discrimination in pubs, and they really felt the hostility after the Empire Windrush newsreels were shown, which often portrayed new arrivals negatively.
So choosing a quiet ceremony was an act of self-protection.
It was a very poignant counterpoint to what you'd normally expect from a wedding.
And you contrast that with Peter and April's wedding just a year later, in May 1953. This is the first of the younger generation to marry, and it's a picture of tradition.
Oh, completely. St. John's Church, white dress, a chimney sweep for luck. And Roy pours all his new ambition into making this magnificent 2-tiered wedding cake.
This wedding represents a return to a specific cultural norm that Emily and Edison just couldn't access. It's a projection of stability.
But the reality that followed was anything but traditional. The new couple moved in with Miriam and Roy.
Right. The source mentions the awkward reality of that, especially Miriam hearing odd noises through the thin walls, which absolutely mortifies her.
It's such an important bit of domestic realism. It reminds you of the severe post-war housing shortage. Couples couldn't just get their own place. They were forced into these close, multi-generational living situations with zero privacy.
And that pressure is what ultimately drives Roy to get a loan so they can move to a flat in Barkingside.
And that loan is a huge marker of change. It symbolizes the younger generation's new need for space, for independence, and their ability to buy into that suburban dream. Peter and April are literally driving away from the family hub in Stratford.
They are embracing a new kind of freedom. April learning to drive, having a small car. It signifies the success of Roy's ambition that they can afford to finance this next phase of life.
A phase that would have been completely unimaginable for Miriam and Roy just 20 years earlier.
Absolutely. So now we transition into part 3, from 1953 to 1958. And this era just rips away that fragile sense of order, exposing these deep family secrets and forcing Miriam to grapple with trauma and, well, moral complexity.
This section is really defined by 2 shocking, devastating revelations that challenge everything Miriam believes about her family and the safety of her children.
Let's start in July 1953 with the physical attack on Miriam herself. She's assaulted in Waddington Street after her driving lesson.
She's hospitalized with a head injury, and the doctor's grim, warning Roy that she won't return fully right away, which suggests some lasting psychological or physical damage.
The attack destabilizes the matriarch and makes her vulnerable. And it's in this moment of weakness that Mary finally breaks her years of silence.
While Miriam is recovering, Mary confesses the real reason she ran away back in 1950.
The heartbreaking truth. She had been sexually abused by a visiting doctor at her school, a Dr. Martin. And he used that classic abuser's tactic, telling her no one would ever believe her.
It's devastating on so many levels. Miriam realizes she mistook this profound emotional pain for simple teenage willfulness. Mary's silence was a direct result of the abuser's manipulation. So Miriam's own recovery suddenly takes a backseat to this fierce protective vow to find Dr. Martin and expose him.
That protective energy then leads to this remarkable and very complicated moment of justice. Shortly after Miriam's assault, an eyewitness reports seeing a young man found half-beaten to death near the scene of the attack.
And the witness notes the attacker was a large man of color.
When Miriam sees Edison's bandaged hands and he returns her lost cross, which she was wearing at the time, she instantly puts the pieces together.
Edison, the man who had suffered so much racism himself, chose to get vigilante justice for his new sister. He tells her, "Anytime, sister. Where I come from, families stick together."
This presents a huge moral paradox, doesn't it? Miriam is applying to be a prison visitor, engaging with the formal justice system, yet she tacitly accepts this violent, extra-legal act of revenge.
It reveals everything. She has been failed by the system herself, with Holloway, and now her daughter was failed by the system, the school, the police who wouldn't have listened to a young girl over a doctor. Edison's action is crude, yes, but it's effective, and most importantly, it's personal.
It shows that for this unconventional family, the bonds of loyalty and immediate protection just outweigh the rule of law.
And the fact that Edison retrieves her lost cross only sanctifies the act in Miriam's eyes. He is her protector, a fierce guardian.
That trauma is eventually overshadowed by the second, even deeper crisis of identity, the twin revelation in 1958. This starts pretty innocently, with Roy befriending a man named Michael Scott through the church choir.
And Miriam instantly dislikes him. She can't really explain why, but she feels odd inside. She senses a wrong in. It's this intuition, sense of familiarity she just can't place.
This intuition proves to be catastrophic. Michael, who is already very ill, gets into a fight next door, and his son, Eric, reveals the shattering truth. Michael had been researching his family tree and discovered he had a long-lost twin born on August 15, 1907.
This is the moment where Miriam's entire life is just thrown into question. She goes straight to an old typewritten letter that was addressed to her maiden name, Mrs. Miriam Baxter, and it confirms the date. Michael Scott is her twin brother, adopted away at birth, and living just blocks away this whole time.
And the fallout isn't just shock. It's this absolute consuming sense of betrayal. Her parents had kept this secret her entire life. It completely dissolves the narrative she grew up with.
She starts questioning everything. Her deceased friends, Sam and Gertrude, did they know? And then, most profoundly, she asks, how do I know if Dad was my dad?
That question is the heart of the crisis. It fundamentally destabilizes her entire existence. If her parents could conceal a twin sibling, what else did they keep secret?
She starts looking at her siblings' history, the age gap with her sister Penelope, and speculates about frightful shenanigans her parents might have been involved in.
It's the moment the strong matriarch is just completely stripped of all certainty. And Roy, her anchor, plays a crucial role here.
He does. He recognizes her deep-seated stubbornness and self-focus in that moment. Michael dies shortly after the revelation, leaving Eric, his son, grieving and needing care. And Roy forces Miriam to confront the immediate needs of the family. He says, I never thought of you as a selfish woman, Dar.
And that comment shakes her out of her existential shock and back into her role as the family's head. The crisis expands the family unit again as they have to incorporate Eric into their care.
And as Miriam navigates all this trauma, the younger generation is making these significant strides, which really demonstrates the rapid societal changes happening in Britain.
Mary's career shift is a perfect example of social mobility. After everything she's been through, she breaks free. She reads a letter at breakfast announcing a full-time job with the BBC, paying 10 times her shoe shop wage.
She is leaving behind manual and retail labor for the aspirational world of broadcasting.
And this professional break is also a geographical one. She moves away from London to Bristol, symbolizing her complete, decisive break from the vulnerability of her childhood home.
Then there's hope. After the sudden, tragic death of her friend Maria from a brain issue, hope finds her calling. She decides to become a cadet nurse, starting training at the Royal London in Whitechapel.
That tragedy crystallized her sense of purpose. It was a firm decision that completely flew in the face of her mother's pessimism. Her mother saying, what good will come of it, heaven knows.
But Hope's acceptance just reflects her focus and enthusiasm. Again, it's the new generation defining their own path based on conviction, not just fulfilling parental expectations.
And finally, we find some true lasting stability for Rafa. After years of trauma with Ganesh, she and Roy's younger brother Jeremy get engaged.
And they marry swiftly at the registry office after Rafa becomes pregnant in 1960. This is a union built on pure stability and mutual respect. Jeremy, the former bachelor, becomes this deeply dedicated partner and father to the triplets.
It's the happiness she deserved after years of intense struggle.
And it forges a strong, new familial bond with the Baxters. This whole blend of career success, new stability, and intense emotional reckoning really defines the late 1950s.
Okay, now we enter the final phase of this deep dive, Part 4, from 1959 to April 1963. This is where Miriam fully confronts the sweeping changes of the 60s, social and environmental, and faces the ultimate question of her own contentment.
The post-war dispersal of the family continues, and it's accelerated by global issues. Emily and Edison's initial move to America in 1956 ends very abruptly.
They moved to Detroit to live with Edison's sister, looking for a better life, free from the specific prejudices of England.
But they come back quickly in 1957. Emily says unequivocally that she just couldn't stand the level of discrimination against the colored she found there. She felt constantly vulnerable.
This is a really powerful insight into the U.S. versus U.K. racial landscape in the mid-50s.
It is. She found the area where Edison's sister lived was rigidly colored only. The hatred, the constant threat of gun crime, the virulent organized bigotry, it was just overwhelming. The American dream completely failed them.
So it was striking that Emily, who experienced enough prejudice in England to have a quiet wedding, found England to be safer and more tolerant than the United States.
They sell their house but decide to move further east of London to escape the smoke. They're still seeking a better life, but one that's firmly anchored in the UK.
And this geographical dispersal is mirrored by an intense generational divide happening right in Miriam's front room. Miriam starts to complain bitterly about the new generation, Sophie at college, Hope training as a nurse. The family's traditional Friday nights become really tense.
The younger members, empowered by education and rising affluence, they start to display what Miriam sees as disdain and scorn for the older generation's values. They are adopting the burgeoning counterculture of the early 1960s, and the clash is profound. They call Peter, the new policeman, the enemy, which reflects this deep institutional distrust and authority that was growing then.
They're using new slang, labeling their parents' generation and their hard-won stability as square.
Miriam is just completely baffled by this cultural revolution happening under her own roof. She fears for her nieces, dreading what the world will be like in 10 years if things carry on the way they're going.
The social tectonic plates are shifting, and Miriam, the matriarch who has held everything together, finds herself alienated from the very future she worked so hard to secure for them.
And this rejection of hard-earned stability is a hallmark of that early 60s youth culture. They see their parents' ambitions, policing, baking, steady jobs, as conformist and boring. They want self-expression, social justice.
But then suddenly, the chaos of social change is replaced by the raw, immutable force of nature in 1963, the Great Freeze.
This event is an incredible historical context and a momentary equalizer. Roy reads that it's the coldest day since 1895. And London, the modern city, is completely vulnerable. We hear about frozen pipes bursting, delivery trucks unable to move, food prices soaring.
And even the Thames freezing solid.
Exactly. And the crisis reaches a fever pitch when Rafa goes into labor during the height of a blizzard in January 63. Miriam, Roy, and Jeremy have to drive her through deep snow just to get her to St. Mary's.
The sheer difficulty of that journey, the slipping tires, the snow, it mirrors the communal grit needed during the Blitz, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It brings the vulnerability of modern life right back to the level of wartime survival. And yet, amidst the chaos, friendships endure. Miriam's old friend Akina, now married and living up north, visits during the freeze, proving those bonds bridge time and distance.
Before we get to Miriam's final decision, we have to address this undercurrent of darkness that haunts her neighborhood. Claude, Mrs. Sharp's extremely thin, mournful-looking son.
Claude moves in after his mother dies. He's widely suspected of being an ex-convict or maybe having been institutionalized. And he begins this strange campaign of harassment against Miriam.
Staring at her through the windows and terrifyingly thudding against the kitchen wall at night.
It's a silent psychological violation of her space. And what's critical is that Roy is completely oblivious to how serious it is. Miriam doesn't tell him everything because she's afraid he'll blow his top, potentially triggering a violent confrontation.
So she manages this silent, sustained psychological conflict completely on her own.
It's only when Peter, the policeman, inadvertently sees how distressed Miriam is that Roy finally starts paying attention. Claude, the source of it all, eventually just vanishes without a word, but his presence suggests this lingering, unresolved darkness in the post-war community that even the matriarch can't conquer.
And finally, we arrive at Miriam's biggest personal decision since marrying Roy. Roy, now financially secure after opening his fourth bakery and planning a fifth, suggests semi-retirement.
Roy's plan is the classic dream of their generation. Hire a manager, sell the house, and move to a nice little spot by the sea.
And Miriam initially loves this plan. She's always had this dream of living by the coast.
But the real climax comes when Roy finally forces her to make a decision about selling the White Road home. She just breaks down,
Confessing the source of her profound distress.
She realizes the stress wasn't about the logistics of moving. It was the psychological burden that she ought to want this dream of a seaside retirement. But having lived through Holloway, the war, the betrayal of her twin, her children's trauma, and finding this deep, sustained stability right there at White Road with Roy, with Rafa next door, she realizes she is already happy.
She turns to Roy, standing in her kitchen, hands covered in soap suds, and tells him she can't move, because she is happy where she is. This provides the ultimate insight into her character after these 15 years.
It does. Her true happiness is found not in some aspirational dream, but in the fierce constancy and community she has built and protected right there at White Road.
That decision just synthesizes this entire 15-year period so perfectly. The family started this era clearing away the physical remnants of the war, the shelters, and they ended having cleared away the deep emotional secrets, Mary's trauma, the twin.
They found that the price of stability was immense emotional turbulence, that the core relationships proved stronger than any illness, betrayal, or prejudice.
Miriam's transformation is complete. She's evolved from a woman fighting to survive conflict to the matriarch of this extended multiracial family, a family she built through sheer grit and compassion. She realizes the greatest revolution wasn't the end of rationing or the rise of television, but the resilience found in just sticking together.
So we leave Miriam finally content, choosing community over the aspirational seaside dream. Given her deep involvement in others' lives, from becoming a prison visitor to caring for her nephew Eric, what new direction might Miriam's energy and this newly confessed contentment lead her to next?
Well, having accepted her happiness and solidified her home base, she has successfully moved from crisis management to institutional engagement. She's now positioned to channel that immense empathetic strength, which was born of her own suffering, into a more formal community leadership role. She's no longer defining herself by the past, but by the purpose she has built in the present.
An exciting, purpose-driven path forward for the woman who has seen and survived it all. She has earned her peace.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Miriam's silver years.